Or the last subject that we're going to examine in the area of exceptions is that of rethrowing exceptions. And what that means is when an exception happens inside your catch handler, you can do some processing, but if you handle the exception pretty much stops with you. You can keep it going by throwing it again, or hence the term rethrowing the exception. Now, why would you want to do this? Let's take a look at an example, and hopefully that will make it a little bit more clear. So here in my rethrowing exceptions example, what I'm going to do is go to my snippets, and I'm going to copy some code in over here. So first I'm going to start with these lines down here, and I'm going to copy those and paste them into my main function. So I've got some code that calls a function called do some math, and it catches an arithmetic exception and writes out a message that says, hey, look, something went wrong in there. You might want to be careful, or something like that. All right, now let's go back to the snippets. Let's copy the do some math function. All right, and that's going to go up here. So starting here on line 10, I've got my do some math function. And this is the example that we've been working with up until now. So what do some math is going to do is the same thing that we've seen up until now, which is try to divide by 0. So here I've got my two variables on line 12. I've got my result on line 13. Here on line 15, I've got my try block, and I'm going to try to divide 10 by 0. Now, of course, what's going to happen is that's going to cause an exception. So the catch handler will execute here, and I'll write out something like, hey, there was an error in do some math. But I don't want the exception to just die here with me. I want the exception to continue on and have other exception handlers do their thing because there might be some additional work that needs to be done. So inside my catch handler, I'm going to throw a new arithmetic exception. Now, if I wanted to just rethrow the same exception, I wouldn't do this. What I would do is I would just simply do this. I would take out this new and just say throw. What that means is take the same exception that I'm currently handling and just rethrow it again. And that would be the same exception object. Things would just continue on as they were, and my catch handler would just be one in a line of catch handlers. But what I'm going to do here is, let me put that code back in, I'm actually going to throw an entirely new exception called an arithmetic exception. Because remember, what I'm catching here is a divide by 0 exception. So let's go ahead and save, and I'm going to run this. So you can see that what happened here is both catch handlers executed. There's the catch handler inside the do some math function, and then there was the catch handler that was in my main program. So let's go back and take a look. You can see that this catch handler executed and this catch handler executed. If I didn't have this line of code in here, and let me just comment it out. Now let's try rerunning it again. You can see that in that case, only my catch handler executed. So the other catch handler doesn't get a chance to run. The exception just gets handled and dies in the do some math function and doesn't get a chance to continue on. So by rethrowing the exception, or in this case, throwing a new one, we give the other exception handler a chance to do its stuff. So why would you do this? Well, suppose you've got an exception handler whose job it is to just log out whenever a particular exception happens. You don't want that catch handler to be the be-all and the end-all. You just want to insert it in the handling process so that that way your log file shows that an exception happened. And then once that exception handler is done logging out whatever information it needs to log out, it can continue on and rethrow that exception so that the other real exception handlers in the process somewhere get a chance to do their work. So let's take a look at what happens when I take out the new arithmetic exception. And I'm not going to change the catch section right here. I'm just going to leave it alone. So I'm going to run it. And you can see that now both catch handlers are being handled again. And because a divide by 0 is an arithmetic exception, the other exception handler is being executed. So this is a really great way to segment out your catch handlers so that each one does its own little piece of work and they don't interfere with each other, and they're able to pass the exception on down the chain so that all the exception handlers have a chance to do whatever it is that they need to do. Just make sure that the last exception handler in the line is the last exception handler in the line and doesn't pass the error up through to the user. At some point, the error needs to be handled and not shown to the user, well, at least in most cases. So you're going to want to make sure that at least one of your catch handlers is where the exception eventually stops.